What I have found is that I tend to gravitate towards what is familiar, not necessarily what is right for me. I was raised in a pretty turbulent environment when it came to relationships. Like, I vividly remember, if I could like pinpoint where did my daddy issues or abandonment issues start, I have like a very visual memory of where I was when that happened. There's two people I was talking to on a dating app. One, hey, I'd love to go out sometime. Great, let me know when and where. Cool, yeah, maybe sometime next week. Long silence. Hey, just following up, what day works? And now I'm like starting to obsess over like checking my phone constantly, like have they responded yet? This person over here on the left, I would love to see you. How does this day work and how does this time work? If this works for you, I'll find the place. All the proactive effort to meet up in person. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna respond to that yet because I just wanna see what happens over here.
This video right here is sponsored by Squarespace. Now, if you don't know what Squarespace is, I don't know where you've been at for the last 10 years, but Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to really succeed and stand out online. Now, whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace is the best place to make a beautiful website, engage with your audience, sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place, all on your terms. Now, you can go over there and start playing around and build this website for free. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ShanBoody to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/ShanBoody to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Now enjoy the rest of this video.
Hi lovers, you're about to watch a class I taught after my pod interview with Lilly Singh, who is currently promoting her new hit film, Doin It. In the full 40-minute conversation out October 1st, Lilly shares the impact that her childhood wounds had on her adult relationships. If you want to watch that 40-minute discussion, click the link in the info box. For now, I really want to make sure people do not miss this part about how attachment wounds form and how to rewire your brain for healthy love.
I really related to Lilly. And I'll share something personal is that I, in the past, I really love chaos and I like feeling obsessed. So I'm in the process of rewiring right now and it does not feel natural. And I feel like I'm wondering if it ever will feel natural or ever give me that same high as I got before.
I can almost promise you it is going to feel better. It definitely can change and it will change, but you must come up with an active plan. You must work within the realm of how your brain works in order to rewire it to acknowledge a new kind of love. I was very fascinated by the concept of the question, why do we repeat childhood patterns? We can experience something in childhood, which, as we all know, is relatively a short amount of time in our lives. The longer that we are alive on this planet for, the shorter that it becomes. It can actually end up only being 10% of your lived experience. So why do we place so much emphasis on what happened during this 10% when we may have another full-ass 90 of a different story, of a different climate, of different messages? So I wanted to share a story with you guys. So when I actually first moved to California in 2014, I was on a hunt for love, not just the opportunity for a career to talk about it, but for love in my own life. And I thought to myself, okay, well, if I want to love things that are alive and be loved in return, what's in my capacity? And plants came to mind. So with all this intention, I went to Home Depot and picked out the most luscious, gorgeous looking plants. Then I brought them home and then I gave them the works. I positioned them perfectly in front of the window and I used to play classical music and even massage my plants with coconut oil. So all this great intention, and lo and behold, about a month later, they all started to die one by one. Let me tell y'all something. I was pissed. I was so pissed, and then I would go out there in the world and observe all these other plants that were at the side of the highway, unloved, uncared for, unchecked for, who were thriving. And it made me feel like plants are just like people. The less that you care about them, the more that they seem to love you. And sometimes the more effort that we put into things, the more that they disappoint us. Obviously bad generalization, but here's the nuanced lesson I had to learn. If you want to love a plant, you need to adapt to how it receives care. It will not adapt to you. If it's designed to thrive in a harsh climate, your healthy one is actually going to be toxic to it. And while that's not directly applicable to how humans receive love the way I deduced back then, there are some similarities. So I want to share first how people are not like plants. Plants have rigid wiring, and essentially that means there's no neuroplasticity. This plant right here is never going to change, right? It's never going to rewire itself to be able to embrace love in classical music. It just likes what it likes. I leave it outside. I haven't thought about this motherfucker in 10 years. It's doing just fine. But what makes humans humans is the fact that not only do we all come with some type of genetic wiring and coding, aka your DNA, we also have the ability to change over a lifetime. It's just that this change is a lot harder than most of us give it credit for, because at least according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you guys know I love referencing, if there's a battle in your brain between belonging and growth, belonging is going to win. And that essentially means that what is familiar to us feels safe, even if it isn't necessarily the best environment, right? Some of us can be the theoretical plant on the side of the highway. And although that isn't the best conditions, those are the conditions that we have adapted to, and thus the conditions that we feel safe in. Move yourself into a warm environment that is centered around safety, care, and love. Even though these are inherently more safe and ideal conditions, if you're not accustomed to them, they can actually make you feel extremely uneasy, unsafe, and thus want to return back to your old environment. And I looked into that and thought, why? Why is the way that we experience love and connection in the beginning of our lives or so influential for the rest of our human lives? And it turns out that, as many of you probably know, for 95% of human history, we existed in hunter-gatherer groups. So within these hunter-gatherer groups, being included, being liked, being in group is essentially the key to your survival. For 95% of human history, the group that you were born into and the set of love rules that you adopted from childhood didn't really change until you died, right? Like that was the fixed culture of the small group of people that you were going to rely on for survival for the rest of your life. So while today this hard wiring is wildly inconvenient, in many ways we owe the survival of our species to it. So that's why the patterns run so deep. And now let me switch gears to explain how it's made. So the short answer is repetition builds prediction. Chemistry makes it feel normal. Reward locks it in, and then it becomes an attachment style. Basically, your internal rule book for how love works. Bowlby called this your working model. We don't get to consciously choose our working model, but we do keep it and carry it into adulthood. And if left unchecked, naturally we start replaying it in new relationships. All right, that's a whole lot of talking to say this. There's great news in here, and that goes back to our plant analogy in that people are not plants, so we can change things. But the humbling news is that we can't change it very quickly. It takes a lot of effort to rewire this pattern. And the first part of that effort is in recognition. So those of you who are in the community, and hopefully those who have been following me for a while, are familiar with my How to Love Me guide. But there was something that I didn't account for that I think the Lilly Singh episode really underscores, is that there's a dramatic difference between how we actually feel love and how we aspirationally want to love. And if you don't have visibility on the two differences, you're going to end up sabotaging things that you're calling into your life. You're going to end up asking for one kind of love and then wondering why you can't seem to get out of the pattern of the old kind of love. So naming it so that you can slowly change it is an integral part of rewriting the story of what love means to you so that it aligns with the kind of life and the kind of nervous system that you know is truly possible for you. Finn. So now I want to turn it over to all of you with all that being said to ask, one, if there's any clarifying questions or things that you want to talk about, any ahas that came up for you either through that or through the Lilly Singh episode.
The question I had was about the connection between stress and I guess your normal state. So I just want you to clarify again, the stress state is what is, I guess, takes precedence, is that correct, over the normal state?
Popping in real quick, I have to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video again, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is chef's kiss. And if you don't know how Squarespace can work for you, let me show you a few things. The Fluid Engine. With the Fluid Engine, the next generation website editor from Squarespace, it has never been easier for anyone to unlock unbreakable creativity. Choose your website starting point. Customize every design detail with reimagined drag and drop technology. Blueprint AI and CEO tools. Start a completely personalized website with a new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. Then easily launch your site and get discovered fast with the integrated optimized CEO tools. So you show up more often to more people and grow the way you want. Flexible payments. Make the checkout seamless for your customers with simple but powerful payment tools. And in eligible countries, offer your customers the option to buy now or pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. So, go to Squarespace, start playing around, have fun, build your website, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ShanBoody to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/ShanBoody to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain.
The question I had was about the connection between stress and I guess your normal state. So I just want you to clarify again. The stress state is what is, I guess, takes precedence. Is that correct? Over the normal state?
That's a great clarifying point. So for some people, they require a little toxicity and then a bit of attention.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Yes.
And then if there is no toxicity and then they get that attention, that reward system doesn't activate. So they don't get that rush of dopamine. So for people who, again, need, like in Lilly Singh's case, she needed a little bit of breadcrumbing in order to actually feel good when that person did text her back. And if somebody was just providing consistent communication, then it wouldn't give her that same feeling of reward that she would get if there weren't adverse conditions first.
That explains so much. It's like why people oftentimes like to get into arguments, which is something I don't like, because it's normal for them in order to make some kind of to activate that pleasure center.
Yeah.
I have a question, Shan. You really opened up a lot on there. The part at the end stood out to me about the actual, what you actually want out of love versus your aspiration. And so I guess my question is you were saying that you want to have a distinction between the two and really know the distinction. But I also want to know, is there a way that you could align those to be the same thing? How I can relate it to my kink life. I want deep intimacy, but my deep intimacy of what I actually want would kind of look like a more high protocol or more aggression would actually be more intimate for someone like me. But what I'm actually desiring to people and communicating to them is that I'm wanting this deep intimacy, but it may not align with what my wants are.
It is a very interesting journey to choose the safer love that you cognitively know is better, but doesn't necessarily feel. I don't want to say doesn't feel as good, but I guess there's some truth to that. Yeah.
All right, I'm taking a stab at this. If I stab in the wrong direction, just tell me, okay? I think what's important to note is that we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Because it can sound like I'm saying right now is that there is a very specific, wholesome prescription for how to be loved that we should all be adopting, and it should look the exact same way, right? Secure attachment style, consistent reward, a sense of safety, vulnerability, mutuality, trust, kindness, kind of all those words, right? So what happens if we actually like something a little to the left? Does it mean that we're inherently broken if we don't like things that are on the prescription healthy, wholesome list? The kind of best personal example I can give to this is I've shared with many of you in the community, grew up being very mean, being told I was very mean. And I have a family full of people who are, my dad is Olympic mean. And I don't mean that necessarily in a wholly traumatic way, because my dad is the kind of person that, when you get into an argument with somebody and then later on you think of the perfect comeback and you're like, you know what I really should have said? My dad said it 100% of the time. And so there's something about that, although not the warm and fuzzy sort of holistic way of thinking about being a good person or being in connection, that I still kind of like. I like wit. I like a little bit of roughness. That's kind of, again, also Caribbean culture. Caribbean people, just by virtue, are very quick-witted and sometimes a little bit cruel at times. So when I first got into my relationship with Jared, I basically said to him, like, hey, I need you to remember that I'm not really conditioned for all this niceness. And sometimes you being really nice to me is actually a turn off to me. Like, I require a little bit of roughness. And he checked me on that.
I want you to know that in difficult times, remember the thing that I was initially attracted to you about was like your confidence. Being timid is going to make things worse. I'm not as nice as you. It doesn't come as natural for me to be like that. And so sometimes, especially in stressful situations, I revert back to more being like my dad.
Being nice has been learned. And I don't want it to be abused. But it's been learned. It's been something that I worked hard for. I have mean thoughts too. I have a mean side too, but I self-control that. And so, I don't ever look at you as somebody that can't control it. So when you do get mean, it lights me up.
Over the years, what I've come to realize is that there's a difference between bungee jumping and going on a roller coaster. And the difference doesn't necessarily have to be in the feeling. You could still get that rush of excitement, that drop in your stomach, the anticipation that you have before it. But in one circumstance, there is much more risk, and the other, it's much more controlled. So how do you get the feelings that you're accustomed to that you actually do still like, even though they are a little bit less stereotypical, warm and fuzzy, but you can still get that within a controlled environment? So in my relationship today, I'm actually love when Jared teases me or makes a little bit of a mean comment. It doesn't come in conflict. It doesn't come at a time where I feel low. He doesn't utilize that as a mechanism to try to motivate me. But when we are in a state of calm and connect and things are good between us and he teases me or makes fun of me, or I'm able to do the same to him, that does still feel like love to me. And that's not something that I'm looking to change. Ginger, please take that and move it to the right direction for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost like identifying what are the things that you learned in childhood that are going to make you feel safe in keeping those things, and then identifying what some things don't make you feel that way is kind of what I got a lot from that. So thank you.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things I said to Lilly in the interview, because in essence, right, the opposite of safe doesn't have to be boring. The opposite of feeling anxious and on edge doesn't have to be predictable and monotonous. So we can still acknowledge parts of our original climate and parts of our just general personality and find ways to still embrace that without labeling everything that we have that, again, doesn't fit that grocery list of wholesome ingredients as toxic or as needing to be adjusted and fixed. Sometimes, again, like, you can still keep parts of the way that you learned about love that might feel a little bit edgier. There might have been a sense of codependency there, which, again, culturally in our society, we're told is a bad thing. But you might find that there are bits of codependency that you actually do still crave and value, but maybe just in a slightly different way than when you were raised. So that's what I mean by not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not saying that the way that you loved in childhood, even if it was imperfect, needs to be completely tossed out in order to adopt a new way. But to Ginger's point, there can be a beautiful blending of the two. That might take the effort of a therapist or a mediator to help you decipher that.
Just based off of this conversation, I need to do a little bit more research about myself to really put together the new list for my new lover so that they can understand, like, for me to understand first how I need love. And then I can convey that to the world and then attract that, as opposed to I'm saying I want one thing and then I'm doing something else, and that's not really in alignment. It's not the truth, just like Ginger was saying. So how do I put that together and make that the actual like compass and guide to me.
Wonderfully said, Khadijah. And yeah, I couldn't bold and underline that prompt for yourself anymore. The extra bit of work of taking a little bit that some people would leave in order to really make this list unique to you is a worthwhile practice. I think there's actually so much more that we could really dive into on this, and I want to give everyone time to digest, and maybe we'll book a second class where we can go over things more. But I want to end it with giving the journal prompt. What's something from your original love climate that you want to rewire? And what are some things that you just want to rework? Maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe it's not flowers and classical music and massages with coconut oil, but there's something about us that still lights us up.